This is Juan Mendoza with Rebel News. I'm here today in Tallahassee, Florida at the state capitol. And today with me, I have Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us at Rebel
Welcome to
News.
Tallahassee.
Thank you. It's a great little city here. It's great to be in Florida. It's an amazing state here. So you haven't been afraid to use all the tools as governor to tackle problems, whether it's Disney's woke politics, critical race theory in schools, or even the Special Olympics trying to mandate vaccines. Democrat governors wield their power all the time. Why don't more Republicans?
Well, look, I think, a lot of people and Republicans, we do want less government. I want less government. I don't necessarily want government involved. The problem is, if these institutions are advancing a leftist ideology, if Disney's trying to impose sexuality in elementary school or in their programming, that is something that's not consistent with the values of the state of Florida. So we have a responsibility to stand up and defend our people. So I think people are understanding that. People out there, they want you to fight for them. And yes, if it's Brandon coming down and doing something out of D.C., of course you fight that. But the threats to a free society are much broader than just simply from federal agencies.
Yes. So now, Governor, one of the big things happening recently, too, is a lot of the Latino community is leaving the Democratic Party. Republican Mayra Flores won a congressional seat in a largely Latino district in South Texas that was a Democrat stronghold for around 100 years. We see Latinos in Florida moving Republican too. Why do you think that's happening?
Well, in Florida, I think there's a number of factors. I mean, one, we have communities that have very close connections to the evils of Marxism, Leninism, whether it's Cuban Americans, whether it's people that have fled Venezuela, whether it's people that have fled Nicaragua. And the fact of the matter is, you look at what Biden's doing, he's cozying up to all those people. And so I think that really is revolting to a lot of those communities. I also think the fact that Florida, we kept the economy open, we had kids in school, working class constituencies, which includes Latinos, not limited to that, of course, they were the ones that got killed by these lockdowns in California and Illinois and these places. And so we lifted them up. We protected jobs and we protected their kids' education. I think that was a huge thing. They also are constituencies that believe in law and order. And so here in the state of Florida, we've stood with law enforcement. We were not allowing rioting. We have I actually signed legislation banning any local government from defunding law enforcement. And that is just something that having a safe community is so important. The only people that like these Soros policies are like very elite liberal white people, basically. No one else in the country wants any of this stuff. And so I think you're seeing that. Then I also think the woke ideology is really repelling voters from all different demographics. But I think particularly when you look at a lot of the Hispanic community, I mean, if you tell, a Hispanic grandmother that she's not a Latina, that she's a Latinx, she doesn't know what the hell you're talking about. I mean, this is lunacy, what they're doing, trying to tell people that men can get pregnant and all this stuff. So I think that's just like nails on the chalkboard. And, in politics, you want to have policies that people agree with and that benefit them. But there's also just a basic test. If they think you're just off your rocker, they're not going to want to vote for you. And the woke Democratic Party is off its rocker.
I see, Governor. Now, another thing that's happening in the United States is the fentanyl crisis, and Florida is also seeing some of the effects of that. So Mexican cartels say they're working with China to smuggle fentanyl into the country in order to destabilize it. What can the state of Florida do to combat the fentanyl crisis, and what should the feds do?
Well, obviously, this is a crisis that's been created by Biden. Now, he inherited a border situation that was much better. He decided to open the border effectively, and now you see record amount of fentanyl coming into the country. So from 18 to 45 years of age in the United States, fentanyl is now the number one cause of death. And that was not the case before, and this is a very harmful narcotic. Yes, China is making most of this. But they would not be able to get this into the country at these levels without an open border. Biden took an oath to support and defend the Constitution and to take care that the laws of this country were faithfully executed. He is violating his oath of office with his reckless border policies. People have absolutely died as a result, and it's totally unacceptable. So, in Florida, what we've done is We've actually sued him on his catch and release policies. You know, when Trump was president, if someone committed a crime, they're here illegally. When they finished their sentence, ICE would pick them up and send them back to where they came from. Biden a lot of times will release criminal aliens back into society. So we're going on them against that. We're also doing penalizing contractors who may be bringing illegal aliens from the border into our state or other states. And I got some money also that if he starts sending buses, we're going to be able to reroute the buses. Now, he hasn't done that yet. Basically, they're just scattering at the southern border, but it's a huge problem. And it's not just the drugs, which is a big deal. You also have sex trafficking, and then just the sheer number of people in people's communities. You know, that affects the schools, that affects the healthcare system, that affects all these different things. So if Republicans take control of the Congress after November, they need to hold him accountable and his administration accountable for this, what he's doing.
I see, Governor. Now, you've been a huge advocate of free speech, not just in the state of Florida, but nationwide. Are you worried about the state of free speech? Between Joe Biden's disinformation commission and big tech oligarchs, what can you do as governor, and what needs to be done by Congress?
Well, this Disinformation Bureau is something out of George Orwell novel. I mean, this is an Orwellian contraption, basically, that is trying to convince the American people that North is South and East is West. And it's all about trying to impose a narrative on the country and to suffocate dissenters who are speaking the truth. And so they need to totally uproot that if Republicans take control. That's totally unacceptable. The reason why I think it's potentially very harmful is not, I don't think that the federal government's going to necessarily come in directly, but what it's going to do is that Disinformation Bureau is going to be what big tech uses to do its censorship policies. And we have a situation now in our country where, because of these big companies, a lot of the speech that takes place in our country is taking place on these platforms that are run by Silicon Valley companies. They get liability protection from the federal government because they say, we're not publishers. All we are is a platform. We're not editorialists. We're just doing that. The problem is they get the protection, and then they turn around and they do discriminate, and they do suffocate people who are challenging the narrative, and they do go after conservative speech. So we passed a bill that I signed last year to try to give Floridians the ability to counteract that if they're suppressed, if they're deplatformed. We've lost in court so far. Texas has a similar bill. I think they may win in the Fifth Circuit. So that'll end up going to the U.S. Supreme Court. But I think the question is, you know, if there are these massive companies that the federal government is giving liability to, and they're really working in concert with the federal government for these censorship decisions, you know, the First Amendment should probably apply at that point to those companies. But at a minimum, you know, we should be able to have policies that will elevate the individual citizen's voice. And so if they want to do business, so that's fine, but you got to respect the individual's right to be able to speak. And conservatives got to get away from this thing to say, because they're private companies, they can do what they want. They are trying to steamroll the conservative half of the country, and they are trying to impose an orthodoxy on our society.
I see. Now, Governor, more Americans have moved to Florida last year than to any other state. Many came from lockdown jurisdictions such as New York and California. How do you make sure that they adopt a freedom mindset and don't just bring their state's failed policies along with them?
Well, you know, I think the question people are asking, who are these people coming? I mean, are they going to come and vote? Because, yeah, you've seen people move from like San Francisco to Austin, Texas. Now you look at how Austin's governed on a local level. It's like a mini San Francisco. All the problems because they elect leftist politicians to enact failed policies. Well, in Florida, it's been different. When I got elected governor in 2018, there were almost 300,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans in Florida, and we had never had more registered Republicans and Democrats in the history of the state. Today, there are over 212,000 more registered Republicans than Democrats. In 3.5 years, we've seen 500,000 registration shift in favor of Republicans. That's telling me two things. One, there are definitely more people shifting from D to R than R to D within Florida. I mean, can you blame them? I wouldn't want to be part of Brandon's party either. So that is for sure. We're doing much better there. But the people that are moving here are moving because of the policies overwhelmingly. And so I think that that's refreshing. And I actually think the migration has probably made Florida more red than it was prior to it happening.
I see. Now, Governor, around half of the states in the U.S. have passed constitutional carry laws. Will you do so for the state of Florida?
Well, the legislature has to do it. I've encouraged them to do it. I'll sign it. I think we will get that done in the next legislative session.
I see. Now, Governor, the legacy media in Florida, both in English and Spanish, is uniformly hostile to you. It feels more like a political campaign than reporting. I've never seen anything like it. So how can you get your message around or through the media to the people?
Well, we go out to the different parts of Florida all the time. We're doing events. And the thing is, if a local news, they've got to put what I say up on the air, and people judge for themselves, and they like what we're doing, and they see the results are positive. So I think more and more people have just totally tuned out legacy press outlets. I think that they realize that they have an agenda, and I think that they realize that they're about trying to craft partisan narratives rather than trying to report facts. And so when I'm getting the incoming, that's just confirmation that I'm over the target and that I'm getting things done, because if I was not doing a good job from a conservative perspective, the media wouldn't be attacking me as much. They're attacking me because of all the things that we've done, to make Florida a good state. They don't want that. They want our state to look more like an Illinois or a California or New York. And that's a perspective that's far outside the mainstream of the people of this state.
I see. Now, Governor, I have one final question for you. So what would Florida be like today? Actually, what would America be like if just 35,000 votes went the other way in the 2018 governor's election?
Well, it would be much different. I mean, clearly Florida would have followed the path of Illinois, New York, California, and that would have devastated this state, because we are very much a service-driven economy here. We've got hospitality, leisure, which has boomed under me, even in the face of COVID. That would have all been totally shut down. Our kids would have been locked out of school. We would have had massive learning loss that would have ended up having implications for years and years in the future. And I do believe nationwide, if Florida had not been leading on all these issues, making sure kids were in school, making sure businesses could stay open and people could work, making sure that you wouldn't be forced out of your job because of a COVID jab mandate, making sure we didn't have things like vaccine passports. If we had not been leading on all that, I think the lockdowners would have won nationwide. I think Biden and his people wanted to do way more than they did, but I think that they saw Florida as the example of people gravitating here, and I think that they feared what the consequences for them politically would be. So I think us standing on the wall was critical for the people of this state, but I do think it had implications nationwide.
Once again, thank you very much for talking with us, Governor DeSantis.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. This is Juan Mendoza with Rebel News. Thank you guys for watching this clip from our exclusive interview with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. You can stay tuned and help us out with our US-based coverage at Rebel News USA. If you would like to see the full interview with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in Tallahassee, Florida, you can do so by going to rebelnewsplus.com and become a member there today.